Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. It's time for some Vermont farmers to consider heading back to school. Whether they're raising cows, sheep, or other livestock, farmers are required to have a nutrient management plan for their farm. Nutrient management plans have helped keep excessive nutrients like phosphorus out of our waterways, which helps protect our environment. Putting together a plan takes time, money, and education. Let's join Keith Silva, who takes us to a Vermont dairy farm for a case in point.
A farmer's work is never done.
Working on the equipment right now, just putting stuff in the shed, make sure it's ready to go in the spring.
Curtis Lane operates Lane Farms, a 300-cow dairy in Bristol. He's the third generation to farm here. Something he's learned growing up in the dairy business is if you're going to make a change, make sure you've done your homework.
The previous generation always resist change, which is good, because if they didn't, you wouldn't make sure it worked before you did it. You'd be taking unnecessary risks. The advantage I have here with the two previous generations, if I'm not guaranteeing it's going to work, I better be quiet, because I'll never hear the end of my failure.
Curtis raises crops on 500 of the farm's 900 acres. Almost all of the tillable acreage is considered highly erodible, so any new idea that Curtis brings to the table has to protect the farm's most precious resource, its soil.
We all knew we didn't want any of our nutrients to run off because we're paying for them or we're applying them. There's a cost associated with putting them in. If they run off, they do us no good, and if they're getting into the body of water, they're doing it no good. As it's going to take generations to clean up our lake, you know, it's no different than raising a child. It all starts at home. We're going to look at what we're doing here now and say, if I'm going to stay in business, I have to be on the edge of what's coming next.
Today, you cannot afford not to do this. This is what's going to protect you from those 2-inch rainstorms.
Starting each January, at multiple locations across the state, University of Vermont Extension offers a 5-week course on nutrient management planning to help farmers balance nutrients and meet state and federal reporting standards.
I learned a lot about my soils, the makeups of the soils, and such things. I knew, oh, this field needs this to grow this, but I didn't know exactly what I was putting into it of that, you know. And we were doing the best practice that we knew of at the time, and now I understand that best practice that we were doing previously was still logical, legit, and accepted. But now if somebody asks me, why are you putting that on that land? I can tell them that it has so many pounds of nitrogen or phosphorus, whatever, and the crop needs this in the soil to remove it.
So how do we actually go from this to this? Any ideas?
In addition to getting a crash course in soil science, participants develop a nutrient management plan, or NMP, that's tailored to their farm. Heather Darby is a UVM Extension agronomist.
Increasing the drainage of your soil. Taking the initiative to write, for a farmer to write their own nutrient management plan, is a huge time investment and also a huge responsibility. And so people that actually take this class, they're here on their own free will. Nobody's making them do this. If they wanted a nutrient management plan for their farm, they could hire somebody to develop that plan for them. They don't have to do it on their own. The farmers that are here are, interested in learning more about soils, about how to better grow their crops, what the crops need, how to reduce their impact on the environment. To really educate themselves is part one, and then to get this plan at the very end is a benefit of doing that. And farmers are really here because they want to learn.
I'm using it as a tool, as you would a wrench. If you plan on taking tires off, you got to have the right wrench. If I plan on farming, I got to have the right tools, and this is a tool that I have access to whenever I want it.
In order to input data and make up-to-the-minute adjustments to their plans, farmers use a computer software program called GoCrop. The software was developed by UVM Extension. There's also a mobile app so farmers can input information while they're in the field.
The nutrient management plan is a current what is happening today. It gives us all the information that we need to make an educated assumption of what we can do the following year based on the results we got in past years.
The plans UVM Extension helps farmers develop go beyond the farm. It's a tangible explanation of what a farmer is doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. For Darby, this kind of knowledge is just as important as having a nutrient management plan.
When farmers take the course and you ask them, why are you here? We know regulation is coming. We hear that a lot. We want to save money. We, want to improve our crops and the environment. So it has become more mainstream. More people know what it means, including the public. So it's also become a powerful sort of communication tool and gives farmers the ability to have something to show their neighbors and community. Yeah, saying like, look, I've gone through this really, intensive process to do my best by the environment and by my farm and by you, and here it is, and can communicate about it too, especially if they've learned firsthand what it all means. And I think people value that as well, because knowledge is power, and this gives them more knowledge and more power to really sort of, communicate about the issues that we have in Vermont today. It's really important.
Back at Lane Farms, the clearest example that Curtis's plan is working is to look at the water coming off his fields. It's clear. The soil's not washing away, which means the nutrients are staying in place. Credit Curtis's nutrient management plan and the pride he takes as a steward of the land.
I use in discussions with people I know things I learned in my nutrient management plan about soil loss and the purpose of the cover crops, the purpose of the sprays, and the purpose of the tillage practices and so on and so forth, of what that directly does to the water quality that I have control of. Or I say control of, which is actually an incorrect word. I have responsibility for. Because if you do not own the water, you own the land around it, underneath the water. You have control of that. That has a direct impact on the water, which you don't own. Now that water that is moving through your land, you have a responsibility to the environment, to your livestock, to your family, and to the general public, that if we all take care of it, it will be there forever.
What's happening at Lane Farms is what's happening across Vermont. Farmers are making plans for today and putting them into practice for tomorrow. In Bristol, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
UVM Extension is once again offering nutrient management courses. Starting in January, the courses will be offered at 5 locations around Vermont. For more information, check the website listed on your screen or contact your local Extension office. Our next segment centers on a young Vermonter from Randolph. She is passionate about what she does and invests a lot of time and energy in doing it. As a result of her hard work, she ended up in the 4-H show ring at the Eastern States Exposition earlier this year.
This is kind of the Super Bowl for working steers. All of the states go through qualifiers and you have to get the points to come here. You have to earn your spot to be down here and compete against everyone else who did the same thing all summer. Today is the cart class, so you have to take a 2-wheeled cart through an obstacle course that the judge sets up, and there's a time limit and you have to do it in the time limit.
What's the time limit?
It depends on the judge and the course. So right now the juniors that are going, they have a 7-minute time limit.
This is like a season. You've been to a lot of fairs and a lot of shows to get here. Tell me a little bit about that process. When did this start and how many shows have you done this year?
I start going to shows and events in May and don't stop going to shows until the middle of October. Wow. So It is very long season, but I love it and miss it when it ends.
So every weekend, or?
Pretty much. There's been like a couple of weekends that I don't have anything to do, which is kind of nice. Get to like relax for a second and like get things back together again.
How old are Tonka and Truck?
They are 23 months old. They will be 2 in October.
They look really small, but I bet you they're not easy to deal with still.
So they're mini Herefords. So they won't get very tall, but they'll still get like wide and kind of long, and they'll put on weight. And they have their days just as much as I have mine, where they'll like snort their heads around and be like, "You want me to do what again?" Like, I mean, it is a challenge and it is hard work, but it's worth it. When you go to a show and you get a blue ribbon, like all of your work becomes worth it in that one moment.
Tell me about how long you've been in 4-H and what's the significance of this year?
So I've been in 4-H for 8 or 9 years, but I've only been showing steers for 5 years. So most of the kids that are down here, not all of them, but a majority of them have been doing this since they were 8 or 6 even, like they've grown up with it. So like I kind of came into the game a little late. So most kids, by the time they get to their last years, they're like, oh, I'm gonna like go to college, and I've done it for so long, and I'm like, this is my last chance to do this. Like I don't get to do this again. So I figured, why not? I'm here, I'll do it.
Excellent. What has this meant to you in your time as a 4-H'er?
This has taught me so much, like work ethic, time management, just everything. Like I cannot like thank 4-H enough for like making me who I am today and like giving me this love for this program and these animals and all of it.
Developing a work ethic and learning to be organized are life skills that are at the core of 4-H and in the hearts of all 4-H'ers. That's our program for today. Thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.